What's up, guys? Welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. Special shout out to my high contributing patrons. Newsome, you rock. Now let's get into today's Precon upgrade with Mutant Menace. And this is a Mutant Tribal deck. Now the synergies already are pretty cool in this deck, so I don't want to mess with it too much just because Mutant Tribal sounds like a really cool deck. We are going to be utilizing the commander, the Mothman. This guy gives rad counters to all of our opponents, and then we're going to use those rad counters to distribute 1/1 counters amongst our board of mutants. And then mutants kind of get value for having 1/1 counters. So the goal of this deck, again, not to change it too much, but we do need to add a little bit more removal, some more card draw, and some more ramp to really get this deck going and making sure we can churn through our library. Stuff like Fathom Mage that is going to be super synergistic in this deck is kind of what we're adding here because, again, this is going to make it to where you can essentially draw 4 cards a rotation. So stuff like that's going to be really useful in this deck. So without further ado, if that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into or deck tech upgrade you want to get into, let's get into it. Right after a word from our sponsors, into the AM. Guys, these shirts are amazing. They're just super comfortable. They've got a lot of vibrant designs on them. They taper at the sleeves. Like I said, the fit's just perfect. So if you guys want to upgrade your wardrobe and have a 10% code to do that, you can use code DECKTECH at checkouts with your purchase to get some of these awesome shirts. One thing I want to mention before we get started is Mothman is a food chain commander. What that means is as long as you have food chain on the battlefield and a creature you can cast from exile, you can very easily go infinite and give everybody infinite rad counters. From there, that's just going to kill the entire table. Now, this won't be featured on the Precon upgrade, but it is just a very powerful combo you can use using this commander. Now, let's get into the Precon upgrade. We have Intis Restoration, Kodama's Reach, and Skyshroud's Claim. I just wanted a little bit more ramp, that way we can really ensure that we're able to cast those very expensive creatures. Everflowing Chalice is also a pretty solid card here. It'll just easily replace one of the signets or talismans just because we do have a little bit of proliferation in the deck. The fact that we're going to be able to put more and more counters on this, it's just going to be a solid way to get some advantage out of cards that are already built into the deck. Fathom Mage is super solid here as long as we're milling everybody out with those rad counters. Whenever we get the option to put a counter on a creature using our commander, we can just choose Fathom Mage every time, drawing us 4 cards a rotation, and that's going to put a lot of work into the deck, making sure that we're drawing into all the cards we need, all the lands we need, giving us just a ton of options on top of a massive creature. Mycoloth, again, very useful with our commander. We can just start shoving more and more counters on this guy, just creating a bigger and bigger board state. Cold-Eyed Selkie, not only does it have Island Walk, but additionally it's another card we can start putting counters on, and it's just going to start drawing us cards while additionally smacking our opponents in the face. Marin of Clan Nels Hoth seemed super solid in this deck. There's a lot of mill and a little bit of recursion, but I just wanted a little bit more, especially when we can start proliferating those experience counters, ensuring that she starts recurring the creatures instead of just returning them to our hand, which is going to be pretty busted. Ruthless Technomancer. Again, there's a lot of creatures that get really big in this deck, and there's also a lot of creatures that have very low power that want to get big over time. So Ruthless Technomancer is perfect for reanimating those, and he's just also a very explosive ramp piece, being able to generate a ton of treasure tokens at one time. Evolutionary Sage seemed like a no-brainer, right? We just start proliferating the rad counters, our entire board of 1/1 counters. It's just going to be a very good card in the deck. Kindred Discovery, again, kind of a no-brainer here. This deck is a mutant tribal deck, so the more card draw we can get out of just casting mutants and attacking mutants, stuff we were already doing, is just going to be icing on the cake. Feast Within, more removal. Bane of Progress, this one's more removal on top of just being a giant creature, which this deck loves. Aberrant also seems like a super solid add here. Not only is he also a mutant, but he has that ravenous ability to replace himself, plus he fixes our lack of removal problem. Moving on, let's talk about what we cut. The first thing I cut was 4 lands. 40 lands is not what you want in a deck that doesn't have very many landfall synergies. Additionally, if you end up being mana screwed, 9 times out of 10 it's not because you don't have enough lands in the deck, it's usually because you need more ramp and card advantage in the deck. which we added both of those, so check. Piper Wright just looked like a slower Cold-Eyed Selkie. Now, I know she does put 1/1 counters on other creatures, which can kind of be useful in the deck, but at the end of the day, I just thought Cold-Eyed Selkie was more efficient, especially mana-wise, when we want to be using our mana to cast our very expensive creatures instead of using our mana to crack clues, if that makes sense. Lumbering Mycosloth. Now, I know this is a mutant, but I just couldn't justify it. He's massive, he has trample, he has a reducing cost, but the problem is he just enters the battlefield, he enters tapped, and he doesn't do anything besides being an 8/8, which just isn't enough anymore. Strength Bobblehead. Now, I think a Bobblehead deck could be really cool. I'm not sure who I want the commander to be yet, but when I find out, I'll be sure to let you guys know. Alone, they're not really powerful, but together they just give you a lot of value, kind of like shrines, but this was definitely an easy cut here. Cathedral Acolyte. Now, the ward is appreciated, but 9 times out of 10, ward 1 people are just going to pay that, especially when you're dropping bombs onto the battlefield that need to be answered. The 1/1 counter, again, kind of useful, but we want to be more strategic with our counters, putting them on specific creatures instead of just 1 extra counter on everything we cast. Casualties of War is a good card, but also too expensive for what it does at the same time. We want our removal in the 6-drop slot to just be hard board wipes. So anytime there's something in the 6-drop slot and doesn't solve the board, you really need to get rid of it. Fraying Sanity definitely does things, but honestly, as long as we're milling like 1 non-land permanent a turn, we're kind of doing what the deck already wants to do anyway, so doubling up on that doesn't do a whole lot for us, and you have to curse only 1 player when we have 3 opponents. It just seemed like an easy cut, that way we could add in some more value pieces. Harmonize was also an easy cut for me. This just isn't it in the form of card advantage, especially in green anymore. If you're playing a creature-based strategy, Harmonize should be the last card you go to, and even then, I really don't think it's that efficient. Biomass's Mutation. This is just a stampede effect that doesn't give our creatures trample, so we're going to go ahead and cut that. There's just a lot more efficient ways to do this, and there's just a lot more efficient game enders, so this one's definitely not going to make the cut. From there, we're going to cut a Talisman because we did add the Ever-Flowing Chalice, which is just going to be a lot more explosive and a little more synergistic. And last but not least, I cut Branching Evolution. Now, I know this one might be a head scratcher, but we already have Corpse Jack Menace in the deck, which I couldn't cut because it's a mutant, and we already have Hardened Scale effects, so we don't need a lot of this effect. And a lot of the times we're putting counters on our creatures, it's just going to be 1 off. So doubling 1 is just going to be 2, so now your Branching Evolution is doing the exact same as your Hardened Scales, so it just kind of seemed like we could easily cut it and not miss it very much. Now, I have a question for you guys. This guy's kind of cool, so I kind of want to build him. I don't know if you guys would rather have me go full up into the rad counters and really start milling our opponents while dealing damage to them, or if you want me to stick with the mutant tribal roots of this deck, but put no budget cap on it. Really excited to hear what you guys think. I kind of think it'd be fun to focus on the rad counters, because honestly the rad counters just kind of seem cool, and then we can start reanimating our opponent's creatures because we're making them mill their deck out. That's just me, but again, let me know in the comments down below what kind of deck or what kind of focus you would want me to have when building this deck. With that being said, guys, thank you for watching the video to the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Really helps me out. I would like to thank my patrons, Newsome, Excessum, Chicken Salad, and Preator. You guys are amazing. Really keep the channel going. With that being said, I hope this helps you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.